Hello and welcome to this tutorial. I'm going to show you how to Tunisian crochet, and we're going to use the Tunisian simple stitch to make a beautiful but simple napkin. 100% cotton yarn is best for this project, and I prefer fingering weights. The best ones I've found for these napkins are all made by Hobie. Either they're beautiful Cotton Kings products, they're very economical rainbow cotton for a much thicker napkin, or even you could use their baby organic cotton. Now, to work in Tunisian crochet, you do need a special Tunisian crochet hook, which is one that allows you to accumulate all of the stitches onto the hook as you go, similar to knitting. I have a short cord attached to this interchangeable 5mm hook that I would use for all of the listed cottons except rainbow, which is a bit heavier, so I would use a 5.5. What you have to remember with Tunisian is that you should choose a hook that is 1.5 to 2 millimeters larger than what is recommended for your yarn. I'm going to start this video by demonstrating with a sport weight yarn because I find those fingering weights just don't show up well on a video. So as with most crochet projects, start with a slip knot. And for our square napkin, we start with a foundation chain. 49 chains in fingering weight will make an approximately 24 cm square napkin. So that's a good size, but you'll go with fewer chains if you're using rainbow, maybe 40 or 45. Once you finish your chain, you want to locate the second back bump from the hook. So here are those back bumps. You'll start by inserting the hook into the second back bump from the hook. So once you've found the second one, insert the hook into it just as you would for many other crochet projects. Yarn over and pull up a loop, but here's where it's different. You keep that loop on the hook. And you're going to do that in each back bump all the way down the chain, keeping the loop on the hook each time. I tend to use my thumb to stabilize the loops on the hook and kind of push them down a bit as you go. You can also use your index finger. And there's a nice clear picture of those back bumps. So insert into each one, yarn over, and pull up a loop. This is the basic Tunisian simple stitch, and you'll simply do that into each back bump down the line. Once you've done it 48 times, you should be exactly at the end. And conveniently, the number of stitches you end up with on the hook should be the same as the number of chains you worked in the first place. So once you've worked into the last back bump, that marks the end of what's called the forward pass. At the end of every forward pass in Tunisian, you work the return pass. Don't turn the work, simply yarn over and pull through one stitch on the hook. Then yarn over and pull through 2 stitches on the hook. And repeat that all the way down the line. So yarn over and pull through 2, yarn over and pull through 2, and keep doing that until only 1 stitch remains on the hook. Each return pass is considered the second half of the row. So that's the first row of our napkin completed. Take a look at what we have. We have this sort of ladder consisting of vertical bars, and each one of those vertical bars is a Tunisian stitch that we're going to work into. Now the very first one on the right edge corresponds to the stitch that you have, the loop that you have on the hook. So we always skip that when we start our next forward pass, and we work into the second one. Let's look at the anatomy here. This is the return pass chain. Each stitch has a front loop and a back loop because it is slung through that return pass chain. Even the very first stitch on your hook, in fact, has a front loop and a back loop. So just take a minute to identify that. Now, in order to start our next forward pass, we're going to insert the hook into the second one from right to left, and we're aiming to go under that front bar of the stitch. Yarn over and pull up a loop as we've been doing, and then keep that loop on the hook. So again, insert the hook from right to left under the front bar, so between the front and back loops of the stitch. Yarn over, pull up a loop. And you just do that into every vertical bar down the line. You get pretty fast at this, and it really is a very relaxing and easy mechanical thing to do. I find it much more satisfying and relaxing than regular crochet, but that's just me. I'm kind of jerky here. This is a bit tight. The first row is always a little bit tight, and it just sort of gets easier after that. So once you do that exactly 47 times, you should be at the end. And I just want to show you This is me working the 47th one. So it's the last vertical bar that looks normal. So work that as you've been doing. Then have a look. Basically, you have a bit of a mess. What this is it's actually a little chain that you created when you pulled through one stitch at the beginning of your return pass. It looks messy, and this is the Tunisian final stitch. It is worked a little bit differently than the rest. Turn the edge of the work towards you slightly so that you can identify a V that marches up the side of your work. You're going to insert the hook under both loops of that V, yarn over and pull up a loop. So that's the Tunisian final stitch. Then you start the return pass again. So yarn over, pull through one, and yarn over, pull through two all the way down the line. Now I'm going to show you that Tunisian final stitch a few more times. Here I have worked the row and I'm back at the end. I'm working the 47th normal vertical bar and I'm ready to do the Tunisian final stitch. So here's that mess again. It's actually just a chain. Turn the left side of the work towards you slightly so you can identify the two loops of the V that's right on the edge. Yarn over and pull through. And then work another return pass. Here I've switched to a different yarn just so that it doesn't get boring. This is rainbow cotton in a different color. So here's what it looks like when you get to the end of your first row. You have the return pass chain sort of slung through your vertical bars in the completed row, and then you have the next row that you're going to be working into, which is just these very obvious vertical bars. So again, each row is now the same. You're going to Tunisian simple stitch 47 times, once into each vertical bar, inserting under just the front loop of each stitch. Here I am at the end again. I've worked the 47th final vertical bar and I'm ready to work the Tunisian final stitch. So let's have a close look. There's that sort of messy chain. Turn the work towards you so that you can identify the line of V's. We now have two because we've worked two rows marching up the side. And the top one is the one you want to work under. You're actually inserting the hook under the two loops of the chain, and so under those two loops and between those loops and the back bump of the little chain you created with the return pass. So that's the end of the forward pass, and then start the return pass as usual. And there's those V's going up the side with the working yarn slung through the top one. And then the return pass, yarn over, pull through one, and yarn over, pull through two all the way down. This is the last time I'm going to show you this. I harp on it because it took me a while to figure out how to do this properly. So there's the last vertical bar worked. So before you work the Tunisian final stitch, just have a look. Identify, now that we've done a few rows, you can really see that line of V's. It's a very nice, neat chain marching up the side of your work. Identify the top V and work under both loops of it. And then start the return pass. So I think you've got it after all those times. Now all you have to do is do that 49 times. And if you lose count, you can count the rows very easily in the finished fabric. When you get to the end, to cast off in Tunisian crochet, you simply work a slip stitch into each stitch. So insert the hook exactly the same as you've been doing, pull up a loop, and then pull through both loops on the hook. And that's just working a slip stitch. So you do this into each stitch in the same way that you work the simple stitches all the way down the line, including into the Tunisian final stitch at the end. I'm not going to show you all the way across because for this napkin, I want to work a regular crochet border around the edges. But if you didn't want to do that and you just want to finish the napkin as it is, that is how you would sort of cast off the top edge. Just work slip stitch all the way down, and it does create this nice row of V's at the top, which matches the sides and bottom. I'm going to pull that out and I'm going to grab a regular crochet hook in the size recommended for the yarn. So for fingering weight, usually a 3.5mm will be good. I'll show you that. You can't read it, but it's a 3.5mm regular crochet hook. So we're going to insert the hook in the same way as you do for Tunisian simple stitch, but instead of working a slip stitch, start with a single crochet. Then work a half double crochet, then a double crochet. So the stitches are sort of getting taller. Then go back down to a half double, single, and then your lowest stitch which is a slip stitch. And then just repeat that pattern. So go back to a single crochet, then work a half double, back up to a double, half double, and back down to a single. So I think you can see what I'm doing here. I'm sort of going to progressively taller and then shorter stitches in an undulating pattern. So it's a very simple border, but it does create this just slight undulation along the edge, which kind of softens the edge. It rounds off the corners a little bit, and it just creates a nice shape. If that's a little fancy for you, you can just work a single crochet into every stitch instead. Or you can leave the napkin as is and not work a border, but I find this helps to eliminate curl. So here we are at the end, work into the last vertical bar. It doesn't really matter in terms of the repeat where you ended up. I don't find it's that noticeable. Work into the Tunisian final stitch under both loops on the corner, just as you normally would, but make sure you work a single crochet into that corner, regardless of where you are in the repeat. Then you're going to work 2 additional single crochets into that same corner stitch in order to round the corner. So work a total of 3 into each corner, and then just continue with the pattern. So half double crochet into the next one. As you work down the left side of your napkin, do make sure that you're working under both loops of the chain that runs up the side, exactly the same as when you work the Tunisian final stitch. So again, going right back into the pattern repeat and working down the left side. And here's what it looks like on the corner. It just sort of rounds it off, makes it easier to shape the napkin when you block it. And I like the way it looks. Once you get to the bottom of the left edge, you'll encounter the starting chain, and you'll work, the corner stitch will be the one that has the yarn tail and the slip knot attached to it. So work 3 single crochets under that stitch to round the corner, and then continue along the bottom of the napkin. The bottom will have exactly the same sort of row of V's or chain along the bottom, and you just work under both loops of it. So I'm now working in Sultan Deluxe, which is my favorite yarn for this napkin project. It's so soft, it's quite fine, so it creates a nice lightweight napkin. It washes really well. That's just to show you the loops there that you can more clearly see. And here's what it looks like when you're finished. It's just really pretty. It's soft. This is Sultan Regular, not the Deluxe, with no added border. So I just left it plain old Tunisian simple stitch, and I didn't add a regular crochet border. It's not double-sided, so the wrong side of the work does look different, and that's true of all Tunisian crochet. Here it is worked with Sultan Deluxe again, but just with a basic simple or single crochet border. So it's just straight, it doesn't undulate, but I still think it looks really nice, and there's the back. This is Sultan Regular, again with the undulating border. The regular Sultan, rather than the Deluxe, is not quite as soft, and it's a bit thicker, but still beautiful. I hope that was clear and that it inspires you to start working things in Tunisian crochet. It's so much fun. I'm going to put a link in the description to the free pattern for that very simple napkin. Thank you for watching.